I wear rose-tinted glasses, or rosé-tinted glasses as they call it. And I'm always very positive about the future of wine as a whole in India.
We haven't even begun to scratch the surface of what India is about to be. Whatever you see right now and whatever you may be impressed with or not impressed with, it's not going to be relevant in 20 years.
Whether it's a Chardonnay at lunch or a Shiraz after dark, Australian wines are increasingly finding their way into Indian restaurants, bars and wine stores. And with a reduction on tariffs on premium wines, more Australian producers have the opportunity to do business here. But it will mean playing the long game. Mumbai is often called the New York of India, famous for its mesmerising beaches, towering buildings, five-star hotels and bustling restaurant and bar scene. It's also where you'll find the popular Pali Bhavan, an Indian restaurant that's not afraid to try new things.
We were the first ones, I believe, not only in the city but also in the country to do only wines when we started off Pali Village Cafe. And it was a challenge earlier because Indians prefer more of the spirits and beers.
Despite India producing its own wine, to offer a wine-only drinks list in 2012 in a country that 30 years earlier wasn't even drinking wine was risky. But in Mumbai, the country's wine capital, it paid off, with the restaurant now a go-to for lovers of all alcoholic drinks, including local and imported wines.
Earlier, Australia was only known for the Chardonnays and the Syrahs, but now they're doing all kinds, from a Petit Verdot to a Vermentino to a Pinot Grigio. They're coming forward to cater to the need of the hour, I would say, yeah.
Wine currently makes up just 1% of alcohol sales in India, with an estimated 3 to 4 million wine drinkers, according to Nikhil Agarwal. But he expects that will more than triple in the next decade.
I think it's growing, it's doubling every 4 to 5 years. And eventually we will get to a point where it's 50 million people, 60 million people, and then it's a very different marketplace.
And that presents a big opportunity for Australia.
It would be silly of any importer now in India not to have Australian wines in their portfolio because there is an obvious benefit to the consumer in buying Australian wines. Hi Dinesh. So we've got a large order for Vas Felix.
Nikhil Agarwal has been in the wine game for 25 years as a sommelier, a wine importer and wine retailer. He's also behind Mumbai's annual Pro Wine Trade Fair, which brings wine and spirit producers together from across the globe. And he's on the hunt for new entrants.
We think that this is a very nice example of Australian Shiraz.
Because besides Vas Felix, we're bringing in Yering Station. And I would like to enclose Australia for now with a wine from South Australia.
The bulk of the wine drunk in India is locally produced. And while Australia is India's largest source of wine imports, with 46% of the market import volume valued at around $10.4 million, it comes from just 40 producers. Barossa Valley-based Jacobs Creek is the biggest and most established player, finding a home in India more than 2 decades ago. And slowly, other brands have worked their way in. The wine drinking culture in India is growing among the aspirational and fast-growing middle class, which is expected to pass 1 billion people in the next 20 years. And thanks to pop culture, Bollywood and globalisation, the younger generations are becoming early adopters and a promising market, with 1 million of them turning the legal drinking age every month.
The space that Australian wines will have on wine lists as well as shelves is only going to increase.
That won't happen overnight, but the India-Australia trade agreement has opened doors for premium Australian wine producers willing to go the distance.
To every one of these winemakers, I say, you now have to focus on diversifying your trade relationship, and India represents a wonderful opportunity for you.
It's the first comprehensive trade deal India has signed with a developed country within the last decade. And over time, it will see the 150% import tariff on Australian bottled wines over $5 drop to between 25% and 50%, depending on the wine. Not all producers will benefit though, like Jacobs Creek, with the bulk of its wine exports to India under the $5 mark. But the government says the focus is on growing the presence of Australian premium wines.
We don't think that's far enough, and in our next round of negotiations, which are already commenced, we hope to drop that tariff to zero so that Australian wine gets into the Indian market tariff-free.
It comes at a critical time for the Australian wine industry. China may have scrapped its punishing import taxes after 3 years, restarting trade with the lucrative wine export destination. But growers and winemakers are still reeling from a grape glut, oversupply of wine and falling worldwide wine consumption. So will the combination of old and new markets help in their recovery?
Given the population, given the move to the middle class, I can't see that over a period of time we shouldn't be able to expect to sell just as much wine into India as we have in the past sold into China.
With the moment ripe for premium wine labels to consider India as a place to do business, South Australia is moving fast. It's created a Wine Ambassadors Club, which will help grow this state's global wine footprint and connect winemakers with retailers and importers in India and across the world.
So 185 years of viticulture here in McLaren Vale. The first vines were planted a bit further north in the region in 1838. So we have this very long reputation of excellence in premium red wines, which I'm sure
in McLaren Vale, buyers from India, along with Vietnam, Japan, Hong Kong and Korea, are getting a taste of what's on offer.
Treasure Trove is our Grenache, McLaren Vale Grenache. We have considered India previously, but we have not approached it as such because it is a very young market and it is a market that is very complex. It is relatively new of us actively pursuing that market, but we have been monitoring it for a very long time.
We don't have anything from South Australia so far.
The group will spend a week touring South Australia's wine regions, from McLaren Vale to the Barossa, Clare to the Adelaide Hills.
It's gorgeous. The wines are excellent. If we can take 1 or 2 wineries from all that we've seen, that would be mission accomplished.
Making that happen relies on relationships, and that can take time and a lot of patience.
Flavours, you really get lovely depth of tannin.
Indians trust slowly, but when they trust rather openly. It's new territory for everyone with wine, so they need to understand a brand and a region and start to trust that what they're drinking is actually worth the money they're paying and they're going to like it.
Time and patience is something Justin McCarthy knows all about. He's already helped Langhorne Creek winery Matala into the Indian market. Now he's working with Matolo in McLaren Vale to do the same.
It's one of the most exciting propositions that we are faced with. We have an incredibly sophisticated market in India, certainly at the restaurant and premium level. Some of the best meals I've ever had in my life have been in India. The bar scenes are incredible. What's really lacking in the market now is education. So the job that Australia has is to educate the consumer and the trade in what Australian wines can do.
Along with Matala, Wirra Wirra is the latest South Australian winery to debut in India, with one pallet of its signature reds being stocked in 5-star hotels and top restaurants in Mumbai and Delhi.
Sales to India will double next year, but off a very low base. So we're sort of looking to keep doubling year on year to the point that we grow over the next 10 years to be a significant market for Wirra Wirra.
It was the reduction in the import tariff that got Wirra Wirra over the line. But strict state regulations, labelling requirements, distribution arrangements and taxes, along with the fact that promoting alcohol is banned by the Indian government, brings added challenges. But for Matthew Della, the benefit outweighs the cost.
Nothing ventured, nothing gained. I also think you need to be the first or the best, and we want to be the first and the best. So I think entering young markets early on has proven itself over and over.
With India being such a young wine country, it's not a case of if you pour it, they will come. Getting the message to even a fraction of its 1.4 billion people that wine exists, and it's worth trying, is the first step.
Globally, it's a mysterious drink. It's one that also attracts a lot of snobbery and a lot of etiquette around it. So I think it's very important in India to sort of demystify it, simplify it, make it more relatable, approachable, accessible as a drink.
Sanal Holland is India's only qualified Master of Wine, a wine consultant, and runs her own wine academy. In her words, she helps shape what Indians are drinking by educating them however she can. Whether it's spruiking a particular drop, explaining the difference between red and white, or suggesting what to snack on with wine, Sanal Holland is taking wine to the masses. And with wine finding its way into Indian films and pop culture and being served at weddings and dinner parties not seen 5 years ago, the pendulum is swinging in the right direction.
Wine is culturally very, very mainstream now. Also, it's the new media symbol of sophistication, success, romance, aspirational living. And as Indians rise up, as they aspire for better homes, better cars, better clothes, better travel, and better food, they, of course, aspire to drink better as well. And so wine sits exactly among that repertoire of better things to consume.
And she says being in front of those aspirational Indians is exactly where Australian winemakers need to be.
Eventually, wine will percolate across every socio-economic fabric of India. If every Indian were to consume even 1 glass of wine a year, our per capita consumption of wine would just be going through the ceiling. And that would be the day, when we've all sort of attained nirvana.
Nirvana may be a long way off, but a destination worth toasting all the same.